Hey, Shane just opened up 23 new accounts today. Each one of them he put 10,000 in, and in each case he put all 10,000 in the first set of a tennis match. Boy, we should take a look at that. Like, what's Shane doing?
You know what's crazy about that, though, is I think about myself getting information like that and how I would handle it. And I'm like, geez, like, make it more obvious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts.
You're listening to Behind the Lines, a podcast presented by inplayLIVE and powered by Pinnacle, the #1 sportsbook where winners play and never get limited. Go to pinnacle.com/inplayLIVE to sign up and get in the game.
Welcome in. It's Behind the Lines, powered by Pinnacle and purifying the sports betting industry. I'm Shane. He's Pace. On today's show, integrity in sports betting. Alberta expected to become fully regulated, and the first Pinnacle contest winner. Stay tuned for the end of the show. We'll find out who has won the first part of the year-long Pinnacle contest. So stay tuned for that. We're about to give away $1,000 USD here on the show.
Wow.
All right. Pace, we've got a great guest on the show. It's a fascinating conversation about integrity in sports betting in North America. Matt Holt going to join us in just a bit. But Pace, first, I just want to bring up this little piece of news that's come across last week. The province of Alberta introduced its regulated market sports betting legislation. It is going to work its way through the Alberta legislature, and potentially by the end of this calendar year, 2025, Alberta could finally become a fully regulated province. It would become, I guess, the third technically, with Ontario, Quebec, and now potentially Alberta sort of joining it. Its legislation very much modeled after what we've done here in Ontario. And that means that, you know, a lot of those regulated sports books would be able to enter that market. And, you know, you could get the Bet365s, the FanDuels, the DraftKings, all the sort of ones that we all have come to know and love over the years, available in Alberta without issue. It feels like a long time coming for that province.
Yeah. I mean, when Ontario regulated, everyone was like, Alberta's next, and it felt like it was going to be a month, you know? Yeah. So I don't know. I guess, yeah. Is it a positive thing? I don't even know if it is anymore. Like, I love the books I have the ability to access in BC. So if you get to keep those and then you get the regulated ones, it's hugely positive. If you get the regulated ones in exchange for getting rid of those, is probably not super positive. But it sounds like, Shane, in Ontario, you get access to almost everything that I have, plus.
It's so I think we have something like 50 operators, and they're providing in the area, I think, of 80 different services. So you know, we're talking there's a lot of options out there. A lot of that is sort of casino play and that kind of thing, but a ton of them are, you know, have at least given it a go in the sports betting realm. You know, we've also seen quite a few exits as well. Fitzdares, I think, becoming one of the latest to leave. They
invited me to play at Powerplay,
but we can go play at Powerplay. Exactly. So it sounds like, you know, they've left, but they've come up with a bit of a plan or a partnership with Powerplay to send customers their way, probably for some kind of, you know, financial gain there. You know, so it's a big market. There's a lot of players, but the players are kind of coming and going, and I'm sure Alberta will sort of see, you know, a similar kind of you know, a sort of similar situation sort of play out where you know, you get all the big names come in and probably establish a foothold, but you get a lot of those lesser known names come in and try to take their little piece of the Alberta pie and perhaps not make it. But that presents great opportunity for a lot of people, a lot of our members who are in Alberta.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nothing wrong with getting some more sports books.
Yeah. Okay. Pace, we're going to be giving away $1,000 USD here on the show. It's the Pinnacle contest. For everybody out there who's not familiar with it, what you had to do was place a $10 wager on Pinnacle over the course of the last 3 months. And now that the first quarter of the year is over, anybody who screenshotted their $10 wager and sent it into us became eligible to win 1,000 USD that gets deposited directly into their Pinnacle account. We will do that at the end of the show. Pace, but is there anything you want to say about it first, but before we get to our guest?
Well, this is quarter one. So quarter two now starts. So we are now accepting entries for quarter two. And if you entered in quarter one, you are not entered for quarter two. So you just join our Discord server. You DM Raj a minimum $10 wager with your whole account showing, so that we have your user ID of your Pinnacle account, and that's how you enter. And we'll be doing this again in a few months. And Shane, are we adding any money to that one with your bracket, or
I don't think the behind the lines promo bracket is going to be able to pull it out.
The dream is done. Reality has set in.
Yeah, reality set in. That dream is over. I mean, I will say that it probably had a really good chance, but it's unlikely to win because there's other people with the same picks that have gone just as far and have done a little bit better with their bracket.
So it's officially over. Okay.
It's basically done.
Yeah. So
I don't want to say it's officially over. I mean, but yeah, the math won't math on that one.
Yeah. So it'll be so what we've decided to do, it'll be April, May, June. We'll do the next giveaway, and then the next one after that, we're actually going to hopefully do live at Bet Bash. So it won't be broken perfectly into quarters.
Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, so stay tuned, everybody, till the end of the show. You will find out who that lucky winner is. But for now, let's bring in our guest. Matt Holt is a former CEO of US Integrity and IC360. He's also the founder and an integrity advocate. Matt, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Really excited to have you on. Just right off the top, I want to get your take on the integrity landscape in sports betting in North America. Where would you say it's at?
Well, I think if you compare it to where we were at prior to the repeal of PASPA, you could say, wow, we've made unbelievable leaps and bounds. But I think as somebody who's been there on the front lines of this battle, I could also say that we have a long way to go. So I think we're halfway through the race here. When we think about some of the integrity issues in sports, Boston College, Toledo, Arizona State, and Headache Smith, I mean, some of those were really rudimentary in how those people got caught. And a lot of them got caught because they got wrapped up in other criminal enterprises. And then somebody cut a deal and spilled the beans on this match fixing. But we weren't catching very many for a long time. And then after the repeal of PASPA, May 14, 2018, with most of these states putting integrity mandates in place, when I started U.S. Integrity, for those 6 years, 2018 to 2024, we were averaging 15 to 20 alerts a month. An alert means when we'd only send an alert out to the entire industry, every operator and every regulator, when something really is right there, we're like 95% sure something's wrong, or it's already been proven that something's wrong. So you figure we were going from 1 every 3 years to 15 to 20 a month. And I still think we have such a long way to go. I still think there's so much more data to analyze and investigate that we weren't. There were a couple of states that had data mandates. For the most part, though, they didn't. And without collecting every bet, it's really difficult for an individual sportsbook to recognize whether an individual bet on a popular game is abnormal or suspicious. But if you told that same sportsbook that took a $20,000 bet on, I don't know, who's playing Red Sox Orioles today on the first 5 of something. If you say, hey, do you know that same account, that same individual made 22 different $20,000 bets at different properties? They'd go, wow, why didn't they try to bet 200 grand at one property? Why are they spreading it out so much? Or why were there 19 new accounts created just to bet this one particular market? And so there's lots of things that when you aggregate the data, you can identify as abnormal and then have a human being further investigate. So I still think there's a long way to go, but kudos to the industry because we've already come so far from where we were just 10, 15 years ago.
Can you give us an example of that process in an actual case that we would know a little bit more about?
Sure.
For example, that initial data came in, what it looked like, and then where it went from there?
Yeah, I think there's been one that sort of resurfaced recently, which was a UFC case. It was a fight. I think it was November 22. Derek Minner, Nwerde Mbieke, and we were seeing unbelievable amounts of money coming in on the favorite Nwerde Mbieke, and we were also seeing an unbelievable amount of money come in on him to win by first round knockout. And this is a guy who had never won by knockout in the UFC, so that's pretty abnormal to not only win by knockout, but specifically win by first round knockout. And then we were seeing an abnormally large amount of new accounts being opened for people just to bet on that fight on the different markets. So we sent an alert out to the entire industry. A lot of the industry took the fight down. And then if you watch the fight, it's really crazy. It almost looks really fixed when you watch it. The underdog, that Derek Minner kid, goes to throw a kick and misses and goes down holding his leg like he's writhing in pain, realizes that he misses, gets back up, throws another kick, because if your leg's really that busted, the first thing you do is throw a kick again. Throws another kick. Immediately after he throws it, goes down again holding that same leg, writhing in pain. At least this one sort of landed, so you could say maybe it got hurt. And then he just shelled up, and the other guy's like, what do I do? Do I hit him? Like, what the heck's going on here? And the ref finally stopped it. Well, come to find out that the fighter had hurt himself in training, and he had 5 kids. This was a guy who had never made more than $20,000 in a year in MMA in his life, just had his 5th child. And the UFC has a rule where if you get hurt during a fight, they pay for your surgery. If you get hurt in training, you're on your own. So supposedly, and we can't verify this with 100% certainty, but there's evidence that says it, that the fighter's trainer, James Krause, who's been banned from the UFC since, reminded that fighter, hey, basically, if you say that it's hurt during the fight, that they'll pay for your surgery. And this is something that's been rumored to happen in the past. Guys go in with injuries, pre-existing, lie on their physicals, and then say that they got hurt during the fight. Sure. So I think it started off as, hey, I'm going to take the fight anyway, even though I know I can't really fight, just to get my surgery paid for. And then later turned into a scheme of, well, if you're going to already know that you're going to lose the fight because you can barely stand up on one leg, why not make sure you go down in round 1, say that your leg's hurt due to injury, and people can make all this money betting by first round knockout. But by the industry coming together, being so diligent, monitoring the wagering activity, understanding it was abnormal, watching the fight, doing the investigative work, and talking to the appropriate folks after, the whole scheme was uncovered, right? A Minner was released and suspended. Krause was banned permanently from the UFC. Another fighter involved in the betting, Jeff Molina. The reason this story resurfaced recently, and I thought it was a good example, is Jeff Molina's suspension is just about to come up. Now, his 3-year suspension is just about over. So, the gaming commissions have been thinking about whether to reinstate him or not. And Molina was an undefeated fighter at the time. So some people thought he may try for reinstatement, whereas, Derek Minner's done, James Krause is done. But that's why the story resurfaced. But it all started with monitoring the abnormal betting activity and then have human beings digging into it.
Okay, so let's stay on this example for a second. I just have to clarify one thing. This fighter did this to get his surgery paid for. He didn't get funded by
at first.
Okay, so he ended up still being someone that in theory would have profited had he have gotten away with this from the insider betting or whatever the hell you want to call it. Okay, because I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, seems a little strange to throw this all for a surgery. But anyways, okay, that's cool information. Now, when it comes to the betting itself, so you're talking about these patterns being identified, the accounts being opened, all that kind of stuff, I think that makes perfect sense. Now this guy goes down, the fight gets ruled how it gets ruled. Are these bettors all paid out? Like, where did it go from there?
So in this case, and that's why it's so important, and that's why almost every state has integrity mandates, and the mandates are that the licensed operators, FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM, Caesars, any licensed sportsbook operator has to contract with a licensed integrity monitor. And the reason is for fights like this. So there are instances in most regulations and laws where if there's an alert sent out by your integrity monitor, the sportsbook can then hold all of those bets. Because otherwise, the sportsbook has to pay every bet. Whether it's obvious error, egregiousness, whatever, they have to pay these bets to customers. It's the law. But if there's an alert from an integrity monitor, you can hold the bets pending investigation. So in this case, most of those bets were held up. And in some cases, you're like, well, how much money were these guys able to get down?
Yeah.
We were working with some law enforcement agencies, and there were guys that at one particular book in a state, and they hit 15 or 16, got 900 grand down at one book.
What?
And, 700 grand. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking these guys are spreading around 3,000 to 5,000. It was millions of dollars from individual bettor and betting groups in some cases. Yeah.
What sportsbook's taking $900,000 on a first round knockout at some shitty UFC?
They'll let you bet 100 grand on the fight. In this case, I think one of the books took 300 grand on the fight itself, then another like 50 grand on the prop markets. And then what they start doing is betting that favorite with the biggest NFL favorites and the biggest college football favorites in parlays. So, hey, I can't bet it again straight. I already hit my limit, but I could do a 100K parlay with Alabama and Nuerta Bieke and Georgia and Nuerta. And now you can basically have unlimited ability to keep piling on bets, and you're just adding in huge money line favorites so that you can keep betting that one fighter in the UFC.
Wow.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it makes, you can see it sort of play out that way. And that's how, guys would end up being able to get down. And that's a great example there too, that you shared. I know in Ontario here, they pulled MMA betting.
They banned the UFC for a while after
because of that. Yes. Yeah. Because of that incident. As states sort of move into the regulated space, you're saying that they have to hire an integrity service like what you created.
Yep.
Right. And at what point, did you realize, hey, there's an opportunity here and there's a big problem here that needs to be fixed? And sort of give me a little bit of the backstory into how you created US Integrity and IC 360.
Sure. So prior to starting US Integrity, I was a VP at a company called Cantor Gaming. We launched the first regulated mobile sports betting app in the United States. We were the first ones in the state of Nevada to offer continuous markets, which is live in-play betting throughout the entire game, not just on timeouts. And it was an interesting company, right? It was a roller coaster ride. It got a lot of media attention, good and bad, but it was an awesome experience. I learned a ton, worked for some amazing people. My boss's boss was Howard Lutnick, who's now appointed in as a position in the U.S. government. My boss, Leah Matus, his boss was Howard Lutnick.
A big position. He's making news over here on this side of the border quite a bit.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure he's making a lot of news. So, it was an awesome opportunity, and I learned so much. And I was the COO of their sister company as well. I was also the SVP of business development for Cantor Gaming, but I was also the chief operating officer of their sister company, CG Analytics, because every casino or sportsbook in Nevada had to buy odds from a licensed information service provider. So we bought one and I ran that. And one of the things we did is we started working with all of the leagues, professional and collegiate, on some what I would call rudimentary at the time, game integrity and info sharing. So I got to know all of these leagues really well, made great contacts. The thought was at a time in 2012, we did like 1.4 billion in handle at Cantor, and the whole state of Nevada did like 2.7 because we were the only ones that had a mobile app. And anyway, everyone quickly developed a mobile app after that. And our market share quickly decreased. But the thought was, hey, if people are running all these bets through bookies and offshore books, some of it might funnel into Nevada where they're trying to hedge it out. And thus you guys might see some of the action. So I was working closely with all the leagues, and then in late 2017, having developed those relationships, talking to the leagues that the injunctions were going to be pulled, PASPA was going to be repealed in Q2 of 2018. So I left Cantor. I said, man, and we looked into the first 4 states that had regs in place. Like if PASPA gets repealed, what states are ready to go the next day? And there were 4: New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Mississippi. And New Jersey and Pennsylvania had regs that operators contract with a licensed integrity monitor. And when we looked, there weren't any. So he said, well, the books are going to have to work with one. There aren't any. Let's start a company to fill that regulatory mandate in a really interesting space. And having worked with the leagues, we were actually starting to develop the techniques at the time of how will we go about identifying these instances and then investigating and handing off the right information to law enforcement. And so fortunately, we started a company where some of the leagues, some of the operators had to work with us right away because we were the licensed integrity monitor. And, you know,
you were the only game in town.
Yeah. And we hoped that we provided an awesome service, and we were able, you know, in the 6 years I ran it, we signed almost every major professional and collegiate sports league: NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, NASCAR, UFC, SEC, Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10. We signed everybody, basically. We all the way down to like the World Surfing League. I mean, we signed every league there was to sign in North America, and just about every licensed sportsbook operator. But what we were still missing, and all of that was amazing, that was the catalyst for the company, was, okay, now everybody's signed up. It said, how do we do more to ensure all these other issues? And that's where it started to get tricky, right? Because then, we need more data. Well, people don't want to give you more data. And that's where I think the growth of the company sort of stunted. We got really good at integrity. We were the premier, supplier of those services. But then it sort of becomes, where do you take the business from here? How do you grow out the services from here? And I think that's where those things sort of get tricky, and you stop doing the work you love.
So I got to ask you, you signed every major North American league, essentially, collegiate level, professional level. Just really quick, was the CFL on the list?
Actually, I don't think so. I think that we had conversations with them and we never quite got there. I think that they had a data provider. Because of where they were in Canada, there wasn't the same mandates on usage of contracts with licensed integrity monitors. And I think that their data provider, who I won't mention that company's name, but everybody could probably figure out who it is, provided some level of free integrity services.
Yeah, right.
And they just took that. Yeah.
So we know there's a lot of corruption in that league. Unfortunately, not firsthand. I'd love to be like, yeah, we made all this money because we know all this stuff, but we've just seen it because we bet it. But okay, I was curious about that. Now, when it comes to the leagues that obviously you did work with and you did sign, were you seeing it at every level?
Yeah. What's funny is there isn't a particular league that was more prone to integrity issues than others necessarily, except for 2. There are 2 sort of sports that made up 50% of the alerts: tennis and esports. And tennis, because it's so one-on-one in the way betting is structured, you could throw the first point or the third point of set 2. So because of the way tennis is structured, and it's 1v1, it makes for very easy match fixing because you can fix little microcosms. The third point of set 2, I'm going to throw it. And then no one really knows because, you win 6-2, 6-4, whatever it is, right? They're easy fixes, and the betting is available on all those markets pretty readily. And then the other one is esports. And I think most of it's due to the age. The average age is about 17 and a half years old, and these kids aren't making money, and they throw matches for a ham sandwich or a new skin, and it got tricky, right? And it wasn't just throwing matches. They would mess with each other's Wi-Fi all the time, and if somebody's Wi-Fi was a millisecond slower or faster, it meant that they would beat them in these games, and there was a lot of manipulation in esports that made it tricky. But if you take those two and throw them out and say, okay, now every other sport, college football, college basketball, NBA, NFL, MLB, everybody, I think the cases are about the same. The NFL had a bunch of cases of prohibited bettor, athletes betting on football. There were football players, and, all those came out publicly. I'm only mentioning public ones. Obviously, the NBA had Jonte Porter and some other ones that are under investigation now. The NCAA had Iowa and Iowa State. Brad Bohannon, the Alabama baseball coach, who's basically done now. He pretty much got a lifetime ban, 15 years, but he'll never coach again as part of that one. They all pretty much, when you look at them, you're like, there's not one sport that seems more prone to integrity-related issues than another, except for tennis and esports. Throwing those two out, the rest of them sort of, it could be any of them that week. Those were pretty problematic.
Crazy. Makes sense, though.
I got to ask about college in particular and college sports, because I'm thinking about sort of the way, campus life, sort of plays out. And we're talking about young people here, a lot of sort of big social circles, lots of social events, and they all sort of center around sports. And now in a big way, they not only just center around sports, but they center around betting on sports and betting on their school teams and that kind of thing. What have you seen in terms of how information is shared between players and their roommates, players and their buddies, players and their girlfriends, and that kind of thing?
So misuse of insider information, is the most prevalent issue there is in sports betting, right? It's misuse of insider information. Then it's prohibited bettor, athletes betting on their own sports, even though a lot of times they're not fixing them, they're just betting on them. Those are the two most common. Then it's sort of game manipulation, then match fixing. But the issue with the inside information is proving intent. But to give you an example of how fast information moves, we would have the syndicates who wanted to stay friendly with us call us sometimes, of course, after they made all their bets when they got info. But I had a syndicate call me one time. It was an SEC basketball team that the flight had mechanical issues and was going to show up late. But they were still going to show up in time to play the game, but they were going to miss shoot around. Well, the statistics told us that for the 3 years prior to that, if you missed your shoot around or your stretch warm-ups for a football game, those teams were like 0-19 against the spread, 0-19 against the spread in the first half, and like 2-17 straight up. Like, if you don't make your warm-ups, you lose the game. And so I called my guy at the SEC, and he called the athletic director of this school, because now the line had moved 6 points on this game. And he called me back like 3 minutes later and said, I just talked to the AD. As always, Matt, your information's 100% correct. But the AD would love to know how you know, because he said the pilot just announced 9 minutes ago that the flight had mechanical issues. And somehow the pilot announces it. That information got out, got in the hands of professional syndicate bettors who bet it, who called me, who I called the SEC to verify. All of it happened so fast.
Wow.
But when we looked back on that incident, one of the probable answers to how did it get out was a kid calling his brother saying, hey, I won't be able to meet you at the game early. We're going to be late and miss shoot-arounds. But he's not trying to bet it. He's calling someone saying, hey, I know I was going to come over and say hi before the game. I won't be able to. We're not going to get there on time. We're not going to have our warm-ups. We're not going to have shoot-around. So, hey, I'll see you later after. The plane has mechanical issues. And now maybe the brother tells somebody. There's a really good example of this when Tom Brady retired with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then came back that final year. There were some groups that were going into the Nevada sports books betting between $1,000 and $20,000 at a time, whatever the books would take, at odds of 60 to 90 to 1 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the Super Bowl. And the books called me after and said, something's up with Brady because people are betting Tampa Bay to win the Super Bowl like they got either Brady or the next great quarterback. And 2 days later, Brady announces he's coming back. And now the books are all upset. They're like, you have to do something about this because we're not going to all lose millions of dollars because Brady, he told a bunch of people and they came and hammered us. But when we looked at the inner circle of just who would know that Tom Brady's coming back, well, the GM of the team, the head coach of the team, at least half a dozen people on the team itself, then Brady, his agent, his family. There was like 12 people that just like out of necessity had to know. And then when you got into their immediate family circles, it got to like 50 really quick. So trying to prove intent with any of that, which one of the 50 leaked it for betting? Maybe none.
Maybe none.
Maybe the agent was just telling some people to get ready for marketing deals and ad deals. And then someone found out early and said, wow, they're still 90-1. I'm going to go throw 20 grand on and see what happens. And so, it's crazy, really.
It is crazy.
It's wild to think, especially in that example you gave of the basketball team that didn't make it 9 minutes from the time that the pilot announces it to you getting the phone call at from the Syndicate, which is a whole sort of thing in and of itself. But it's like that brother had to tell somebody, had to make its way to the betting syndicate to get to you all in 9 minutes is just wild to think. Also, why is the betting syndicate calling you? Are they calling to?
Oh, that's for good reason, Shane.
are they calling? Are they calling to verify? Are they calling to confirm or deny? What are they? And how does that relationship work? Give me sort of an inside look at
I remember one day I called one of the biggest betting syndicates in the world. I was able through my contacts to get a hold of the individual who sort of ran it. And I called him and I said, every time you guys make a bet, the line moves so much that a lot of these bets could be deemed as suspicious. And do you want me or my team or other integrity providers investigating every bet you make? Or if we open up the lines of communication and you send them to me and I can go, oh, the line moved so much in this game because this syndicate hit it early. I said I can eliminate some false positives, not be digging into you all as much, and it sort of adds some credibility to what you all are doing. You say you're just pro bettors, you're not doing anything illegal. Let's open up the lines of communication. And so I think that there was some good faith on both sides that, I don't think any of those betting syndicates do everything 100% legal, right? A lot of them have beards and set up beards through accounts, and because they get limited and they can only bet so much themselves. And of course, that's not legal. But on the same side, if you're also helping us and sharing information and being pretty transparent, look, you didn't see any syndicates getting busted, right? But if they were jerks about it, naturally, because of the influence they had on betting markets, a lot of the bets they made would have ended up being investigated. And these people would be getting calls constantly. Why are you betting this? And were you involved in this? So I think it was mutually beneficial.
Well, I think also, too, from the standpoint of being the group that got the information that got down and then shutting that opportunity down to the rest of the world 9 minutes later gives them a higher probability of any payout in question. If the sportsbooks now have a $10+ million liability, or maybe $100+ million liability, I don't know how big these numbers get, they cut that off and they're the ones that get the ones that get to eat. Right.
Yeah. To your point, there's a less chance of that game being flagged for suspicious activity and the payouts being held up.
Right.
Right.
That is bizarre. And the thing is I think to the Tom Brady story and the basketball story, in both cases, it's really obvious to me that there is, without question, the ability to say that nothing malicious happened. I'm not saying nothing malicious happened, but it's really easy to go, guys, like, Tom Brady's agent has a son and he told his buddy at high school, and before you know it, like, right? Like that, and that makes a lot of sense. And the other side of it, of course, is that there could have been some, hey guys, hit this while you still can kind of thing,
By the way, they didn't win the Super Bowl.
They went like 7-9 that season.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they weren't even good. And
yeah, they won the division and lost their first playoff game. But but I mean, separately of that, if you got 90-1 on them to win the Super Bowl before the season started, you could have extracted some value out of that by selling your ticket, cashing out, hedging, whatever. So yeah, crazy stuff.
Matt, where would you say some of the biggest cracks still exist? And I guess what's being done out there to kind of to fill them in or sort of, work on them?
Number one is the lack of data sharing. Again, if there was one source, an independent source, think of the SEC. If you're Charles Schwab, you don't get to file the trades you want to. You have to file every trade with the SEC so that they can independently verify nothing suspicious is going on. But in North America, it's not like that. Many of the states don't have data mandates. Some of the books don't share at all. Some of them share sometimes. And so you're never getting the whole picture. And again, like if we knew that the same bettor, hey, Shane just opened up 23 new accounts today. Each one of them, he put 10,000 in. And in each case, he put all 10,000 in the first set of a tennis match. Boy, we should take a look at that. Like, what's Shane doing?
You know what's crazy about that, though, is I think about myself getting information like that and how I would handle it. And I'm like, geez, like, make it more obvious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts.
But what's crazy is each book individually, all they know is one guy named Shane signed up for an account. And
right.
But again, if all the data was collected, unified, we'd know Shane signed up for 23 accounts today, funded all of them for 10 grand and bet the entire balance on the second set or second point of the first set of a tennis match. We go, boy, that's weird. We really got to talk to Shane.
I don't know if I like this idea of data sharing.
Neither do I, but at the same time, so it's context is king, right? So Matt, I look at it and I go, I don't like the idea of athletes or teams or organizations in any capacity rigging sports. In fact, especially when you get away from the regulated market and you get into some of the gray market sports books, they'll use any excuse they can to essentially have a winning player fall on a sword that wasn't even associated with their account, where they go, oh, he did this, so we're not paying him, right? So the less that this stuff exists in sports, in my opinion, now some of these syndicates obviously might disagree with me, the better. I don't want to think about a game having some sort of corrupt element associated with it. I want things to be fair and both sides are playing to win the game, period, right? Like it's a pretty simple concept. But when you start talking about sharing data in sports books, we look at what else is going to be shared. And this example of Shane opening 20 accounts, well, what if he did open 20 accounts because he started his journey as a sports bettor and he's doing it in a way to potentially use some of that bonus money to turn it into cash, play some of the odds against each other, learn to actually profit from sports betting where the 20 accounts all get clipped together at once because of this data sharing where nothing malicious occurred. And that's where, in my opinion, at least, the SEC concept is brilliant, provided that it is only for that one purpose that you just mentioned, because
correct,
outside of that purpose as a player, it's terrifying.
And that the data not be shared back to all of the sports books unless it's for an integrity related issue.
Right. Right.
Right. So
can that exist?
I don't know, but I think if we really truly want to identify, let's just say even half of these instances that are happening, because I feel at 15, 20 alerts a month, we were catching like 5 to 10%.
Wow.
Huh.
And because we just didn't have enough data and information.
So can you talk about the 90% that slips under the crack? Like, why wouldn't you catch one of those 90%? Like, what are some of the reasons? Because you gave some obvious ones. Yeah, but you gave some obvious ones, right? So when you say you don't have the data and information, what is it that's missing? What kind of data is missing?
New account signups, the actual betting data. again, let's just use a standard bet. So something abnormal like a UFC fight on an undercard. If in that first round knockout prop, if we saw from the sports books that 35 different sports books got hit, whether it's the same accounts or not, with 4 to 6 figure bets on this guy to win by first round knockout who's never had a knockout, if nothing else, we'd have a human being watch the fight and investigate a little further. So at least somebody's looking to see, does this look right? Does it feel right? But right now we don't get it. That one UFC one, it got so egregious that the books actually reported it.
Right.
But the books are de-incentivized to report. If they report too many incidents, then in Ontario, UFC gets banned for a while until they make some policy adjustments. And that happened with ITF tennis in some jurisdictions. So there were so many alerts on ITF tennis. Some jurisdictions contemplated banning it, and then coincidentally, we stopped getting ITF alerts from the
Wow.
books. We just stopped. It's like, look, we were averaging one every third day on ITF. Now we went 6 months without one. Come on.
Isn't that crazy? So you know what that says to me is if you're a sports book and this is your business and this is your lifeblood, it's like we want to report this to get rid of it, obviously. But if that comes at the expense of allowing our business to operate the way it currently is, then we don't want to do it anymore, which almost makes me go, well, then this is just a part of the betting ecosystem and we just have to accept it.
It sort of is, but I do think if you had that independent verification source like the SEC, we could actually get rid of enough. And to your point, put restrictions and guidelines on what the data can be used for. This will only be used to identify abnormal, suspicious, nefarious, or illicit sports betting activity and nothing else. Then we could prevent a lot of this because we all want fair sports. Otherwise, it becomes wrestling. And then, sure, let's all throw $20 because we don't know who's going to win the wrestling match, even though the wrestlers do and the promoters do and whatever. But you can't bet real money on wrestling because the outcome's predetermined. And so we need sports to be fair and the outcome to be in question. But you're right. Like there's a balance between all of it. And the sports books themselves are de-incentivized to report. They're incentivized to report sometimes. And then you get into a situation where, hey, maybe the sports books feel like they should report this one because they're going to eat substantial losses on it. But maybe we didn't get hit as hard on this one, so we just don't report it because we don't want to push the envelope too far. Or, hey, we had 3 of these this month. Let's not report this one. We'll just eat this one because it's good for business. We don't want this betting market to get banned. At the end of the day, either way, because there's so many conflicts of interest in there, they shouldn't be deciding. It should be some independent source, similar to the SEC, whose only job is to analyze data and identify abnormalities.
Yeah, the selective reporting there is definitely a concern. You know, you can't pick and choose when you're going to report.
But Shane, think about it from this standpoint. You just had this player, that had this pattern on their account. You chose not to report it, but of course you can then limit that player so they can no longer play with you anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas going back to the point Matt has about the data sharing, you go, okay, what if the sports books no longer have that tool at their disposal, which obviously in Massachusetts right now is being investigated. So I can't limit you anymore. I have to report it. And the whole thing turns where this is a really positive thing for winning players because the people that are doing things maliciously, let's call it cheating with this insider throwing, fixing matches, whatever the case, right?
Whatever it might be.
They have no ability to continue to do that anymore because they've been investigated and caught. And then legitimate winning players actually can keep winning because their accounts weren't limited. And then you have, like, obviously we're creating this hypothetical, theoretical world that the 3 of us may agree will never exist. Right? Right. But then you go, hey, we're onto something here, you know?
It's interesting. And there's a lot of ways to skin the cat here. But when you asked me right at the very beginning of the show, where do I think we're at? When I said we're at halfway, it's because we haven't really got there fully yet.
Yeah. It's wildly interesting, and we brought up the CFL already, but like the fact that they're not on the list is like really obvious to us because we've seen stuff that would be similar to that kick example you gave at the start of you being on with us. We've seen it in real time where we're like, wait, what just happened? And it's almost like a rule was made up on the spot.
Yeah. There's certainly lots of examples we could go through, and some of them, I used to say we catch America's dumbest criminals because some of them were pretty bad, and the attempts that they made were pretty bad.
Right, and then you get poor Calvin Ridley in the mix of all this type of discussion. The guy just made a stupid parlay on his own team to win.
That's prohibited better. He wasn't trying to fix matches. I know, and it's like, I was bored. He was injured. He threw a few what to all of us would be $5 parlays, and he just happened to have football and his own team in some of those parlays.
But it was his team to win, and he lost the bet.
Yeah, and he wasn't involved in the game. He was hurt at the time.
Yeah. Poor guy.
Matt, what's up next for you? You're no longer with U.S. Integrity IC 360, but you're looking to you're still sort of looking to launch something.
Yeah, what's great about what's interesting is I had never been unemployed for more than an hour in my professional career. Since the day I graduated college, I've spent every second of my post-collegiate career in regulated sports betting. And finally getting to step back, selling my shares, exiting the company, I could say, what are like the problem areas and need areas in college sports, pro sports, gaming, and how could we build something that's both sustainable and scalable to grow? And I think there's some exciting new ventures out there. And one of the big things I think is really interesting is that no one yet is taking all the different data sets and using it for non-gambling reasons, like concessions data and commercialization data and attendance data, and combining it with sports betting data. Like, there's things that are obvious when we start pulling in simple data sets. Like, guess what? When Alabama is a 30-plus point favorite, compared to a 7 or less point favorite, they sell less hot dogs, they sell less beers, it's a less engaged audience. People show up later and go home earlier when their team's a 30-point favorite. How can we help colleges put together better schedules that bring more engaged and exciting fans to the stadiums, but still allow for the managing of that schedule from a success rate enough to the point where Alabama is still going to make the CFP 3 out of 5 years and still going to win enough games to keep the fan base happy, but yet can make an extra $10 or $20 million a game in those huge college stadiums by bringing in a more engaged fan who gets there earlier, pays more for tickets, stays later, buys an extra hot dog, an extra beer, a sweatshirt, and something for the kids on the way out, because they're excited about the game instead of it's 51-0 by halftime.
That's genius.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. Yeah. That'd be really, just creating a more engaged kind of experience for everybody.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we're working on now is how do we ensure that we have all the right data, put it together in a product that's really useful for professional and collegiate sports leagues. And we're hoping to launch something by football season, and we're pretty excited about it.
Awesome, man. So cool. Well, good luck with that. And thanks so much for coming on the show, Matt Holt.
Guys, thanks for having me. Reach out anytime.
All right. Well, we'll do. Take care. All right. That was Matt Holt. A fascinating conversation there, Pace. I mean, I feel like I learned quite a bit about how information flows and, flows from average Joes or players themselves to betting syndicates to the sports books. Really sort of interesting ecosystem there of information sharing.
Big time. And yeah, I definitely learned at Bet Bash last year that there's a lot of people that cheat to win. And part of me just wishes none of this stuff existed because I don't like being lumped in and associated as a winning player. As remember talk about the Massachusetts thing and like they basically said like the people that win cheat.
Yep.
Shane, you know firsthand, a lot of what we do, 99.9% of what we do has nothing, like we're just playing the odds that we're being given in real time. And it isn't like we're, gaining some sort of statistical advantage based on information that isn't available to everybody. Whereas a lot of this stuff is information that is not available to everybody, right? Or we have information that isn't available to everyone, but it's because we have compounded it from what is available to everyone, right?
Yeah. We've put in the work to figure out data.
Exactly. So I wish some of that stuff didn't exist. I it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So
yeah, really interesting. Would be interesting to see what he's up to next and how that works out. Would love to have him back on the show as that kind of sort of moves forward as well, because that sounds like some fascinating work that he's planning to take on. Okay, let's move forward. The big promise. The Pinnacle contest giveaway, $1,000 USD going into a lucky contestant's account. We've been doing this for the past 3 months. All you have to do is make a $10 wager, send it in to us, and you would have been entered for this leg of the contest. There will be more throughout the year. We've got 3 more after this one for a total of 4. Pace, you ready to do this?
Yeah, and I will say there's 30 entrants, so you have a really good probability of winning. So if you're thinking, oh, I didn't enter, make sure you enter for the next one, because it's a great possibility of winning. Anyways, I have assigned everyone a random number, and if you've ever done a live stream giveaway with me, I'm doing the Excel rand between and hitting enter, and it is number 15. I'm going to say your Discord handle on the show. The winner is Vig16. Congratulations. So shoot myself or Raj a DM to claim your prize on Discord. Huge congratulations. And if it is not claimed by, I would say, recording next week, which will be Monday for us, Shane, then I think it's going to go into the next quarter, and the next quarter would be even bigger. So you have to have listened to the show to have claimed it, or had someone message you saying, hey, you won, so that you know to claim it. But anyways, congrats to Vig16, our guy Nick, on the W, and I hope you claim.
All right, Vig16, congratulations. Look at that. $1,000 USD coming your way. Hopefully you claim it. It doesn't get rolled over into the next one, but if it does, hey, $2,000 for the next contest there. And only 30 of you entered. Look at that. I mean, come on, guys. This is a free $1,000. You gotta enter. You gotta enter to win. And if only 30 people are going to do it, I mean, why not you? You gotta, that's a pretty good shot at winning. So for the next leg of the contest, guys, get those entries in. Pay same thing moving forward. $10 bet on Pinnacle, and that's all it takes.
Yep. And we're moving into a really exciting time of the year here, guys. We're into the final 7-8-ish games of the NHL, similar for the NBA, and then it's kind of the push to the playoffs. And what I love about the push to the playoffs from a betting standpoint is motivations tend to be clear, and that could be teams like the 76ers that we know that really might not be winning too much basketball. That could be teams like the Vancouver Canucks that are desperate beyond reason to basically win every remaining last game they have to try to slide into the playoffs. That could be teams like the Washington Capitals that are extremely comfortable sitting at the top of their division. There's different ways, put the Thunder on that list as well. There's different ways teams play in different scenarios, and they tend to be quite profitable. And of course, that obviously translates really nicely into the playoffs themselves, where the way teams play in a series where elimination of their season or championships on the line is a lot different than, say, December 28th in the NBA or in the NHL. So really exciting time of year, low volume, high ROI, and very much looking forward to it. So let's buckle up.
Yeah, an awesome time of the year as we get into the playoffs for NHL and NBA. These are some of the times of the year where I've done my best. But Pace, I gotta say, baseball is back. 5 days of baseball in March, regular season play in March, and the ROI on baseball is going to be way up there for the month of March when compared to the other sports.
It was a great start to the season. It's a long season.
It is a very long season.
Yeah, it's
very,
a long
very
season.
long season. Let's not get too crazy with it just yet. But a really, really solid start for the community with MLB.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. All right, Pace. Well, to you, to everybody out there, sports bettors listening around the world. Till next week. Keep beating those books. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join In Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.